So let's assume we're live now. It's more fun like that. So we've got the Saturday DFS show, strategy wise. This is of course your old pal Emac coming to you with Adam Ship My Money Share. I don't think I can say Adam Share without saying Adam Ship My Money Share. When you hear me say Adam, do you mentally say in your mind Ship My Money Share?
You act like I listened to you, Emac.
Oh, right in the heart before. Oh, goodness. All right. Well, it's going to be a quick show. I'm going to have to go to the hospital. This isn't good. Oh, speaking of scary. So my wife has a fun little part-time job at a exercise studio so she can get free classes. And guy had a heart attack. Scary.
That's a good way to start the morning off.
Yeah. It is the same. He ended up going to the hospital, EMTs, everything. So thoughts and prayers to that family. Kind of sucks. He was younger than me, so yikes. Never like to see that. But let's get going here. Looking at the slate, we have a 6-gamer. There is one 5 o'clock game. It looks like FanDuel does have an all-day slate. DraftKings looks like they're just doing the single-game slate for that. So we've got the fun ahead of us. 3 teams are on a back-to-back. That would be Milwaukee, the Spurs, and Toronto. We have a myriad of injury things that we'll look at. We're going to go game by game here, so we will cover those. But the overarching big injury news that we'll want to consider is Kyle Lowry is out. Kawhi Leonard is out. He played last night, but this is a back-to-back for Toronto. He's been ruled out. We don't know what's happening with Ibaka. And then Danny Green is very doubtful. So I expect we'll see him ruled out in plenty of time. They both are dealing with sore knees, but that, of course, could put, depending on who's out, Greg Monroe, Pascal Siakam, Fred VanVleet, DeLon Wright. Those will be the guys that get the immediate boost. VanVleet is now 5,900 on DraftKings. That is insane. I would have never said he would cross that threshold had you asked me before the season. And then Dallas, that's the other big one. We know that Kleber is back, but Wesley Matthews is questionable with a sore foot, and then Dennis Smith Jr. is doubtful with his sore wrist. He's missed 6 or 7 of the last 8 games. So he is, I don't expect him to play, so that will, of course, be boost for various backcourt guys, depending on what is going out. And let's see here. Adam may be frozen, so let's check this out. Could this be my first ever ship my DSL moment here? I've got a nice, I wish you guys could see the screenshot of Adam. He is he's looking half-baked, shall we say, much like the movie. So we'll see what's going on with him. In the meantime, while we get that squared away, just a reminder here, if you are looking for a little Christmas goodness, we still have the 24 days of giveaways going on, and all you need to do to participate in that is after this show, in the comment section, just write a comment and let us know. We'll come up with a question here during the show, but just put in a comment. And everybody that comments on all of the shows throughout the day here at Awesemo will be eligible for a drawing that will get you one lucky winner. Will get a free 1-month subscription of Awesemo premium content. So it's a pretty good deal. And then everybody that has commented throughout the 24 days of giveaways will be put into the drawing, which Josh Engelman will be drawing. I believe he's going to do it on December 24th, but he will be doing a Christmas Day show, getting us all ready for the NBA action that is going on Christmas Day. We know that's the big slate that tips off at noon. So that will be the lucky winner for that. Will get 1 year of all access Awesemo premium content. So pretty good deal there. I'm trying to remember what I was trying to come up with different things that we haven't done for the questions, kind of kept them holiday related. So today we'll do, just as this will be the last time you guys see me on a show prior to this, we'll do what is your favorite holiday tradition, and that can be anything. Because it opening presents on Christmas Eve, Christmas morning. Do you and your family have a white elephant gift exchange? What is your favorite Christmas tradition? Mine used to be we would all get together, multiple generations, and we would play this game called Balderdash. And the game basically was they would give a word, a date, a movie title, and you would have to do a plot or a definition or make up something, and then the best winner was voted on by everybody. And there was one correct answer that the dasher would put in there. So anyway, it's fun. All right, so let's see. Adam is going to muck around with that. So we'll start in here. So let me get my correct pages up. We've done a little bit of, let's see. I ran the crunch. So let's look at that. Adam says he's rebooting and should be back here shortly. So we'll give him a second here. But ran the crunch here, unabated on both DraftKings and FanDuel here using the trusty projections. And we're getting a lot of John Wall. I'm getting a lot of Pascal Siakam and getting a lot of Kevin Durant, which was not exactly what I expected. I thought there would be more James Harden in the mix. So the question today is going to be how much James Harden can we get? How do we get up to him? How do we afford it, etc.? So the interesting thing with him is on DraftKings, he's 11,600. So if you are going to be running an optimizer, you may have to manually goose that projection a little bit or set your parameters to capture him, because currently he is not popping here for me. Now I'm going to want to make him a piece of the excitement tonight. I'm going to want to get him in as my A-core play, and a lot of that's going to hinge on what's going on in Dallas with their backcourt, so we can get some value. A lot of that is going to depend on, is Ibaka in or out? We know that Danny Green is probably going to be out. Over on FanDuel, it's interesting. We've got a lot of Kevin Durant, once again, ends up being one of my top guys. Steph Curry, Ben Simmons, Devin Booker, LaMarcus Aldridge. Yikes. LaMarcus Aldridge. That is a guy who has disappointed quite a bit over the last few games here. He is rarely cresting over that 40 fantasy point total, and we are just seeing it be not a disappointing season, because the Spurs have been involved in blowouts seemingly in 2/3 of their last dozen games, one way or the other. Either they're winning or they're getting their ass kicked, but it's suppressing some of the minutes. In close games, we know that Aldridge should be solid, but we're not seeing it as much. But we get a lot of DeMar DeRozan, who plays a ton of minutes in those close games, so that's nice. And then Rudy Gay has been a nice addition there, who seemingly still goes under utilized, overlooked, however you want to frame that, by the daily fantasy world. So kind of fun there. All right, I see Adam is working on the old reset. So let's look here at the first game. We can talk a little bit about that. It'll be Phoenix and Washington. I know Adam has strong thoughts here. He is born and raised in the DC area. I myself moved out here about a dozen years ago, so I sort of adopted the Wizards once I learned the Seattle Supersonics were not going to be coming back. I was sad that Kevin Durant did not reunite with me here in the DC area, since he is from DC, but it is what it is. So we've got the trade that shipped Austin Rivers and Kelly Oubre off to Phoenix, and it brought back Trevor Ariza. So when Ariza came back here, he was immediately inserted into the rotation, playing a massive amount of minutes. On the other side, Kelly Oubre has played one game. He came off the bench, had in the mid-20s for minutes, and Phoenix outright waived Austin Rivers, which was a bit of a surprise, because most of the pundits thought that, hey, you know, they really could use somebody there in the backcourt and would help develop some of the talent, not put as much pressure on Devin Booker to literally have the ball in his hands on every single possession, and they waived him. So bit of a surprise there. Also doesn't look too good at GM Doc Rivers for what he gave up to get his son on the team. All right, let's keep looking here. All right, just checking chat. Let's see. Yes, Adam is frozen. He should be back. Not to fear. He's resetting. You got me here. Reminder: if you guys want free 1 week behind the paywall access to everything Awesemo.com, you can use the promo code DFS Strategy. Go to Awesemo.com. Up in the upper right, you can click on the Join tab and then fill out your information. The very last field will be a coupon code field. Just type in DFS Strategy, one word. Select a package. Make sure you grab the one with Fantasy Cruncher because you'll get that as well. 1 free week DFS Strategy. So looking here at the Wizards, let's start breaking this down. So Phoenix and Washington are playing here. Washington's favored at home by 6. This has one of our best over-unders on the slate. We have a 231 total. Dwarfs pretty much everything else. The Dallas Golden State game is checking in the mid 220s, and then everything else is in the mid 2 teens, which it's all relative. But Washington and Phoenix, no bueno when it comes to defense. So John Wall and Markieff Morris were both out of practice on Friday with illnesses. They've been removed from the injury report, so they are both expected to play. John Wall's checking in at 8,900 here on DraftKings, and that is a reasonable price point. Now we're going to have some decisions here because the popular move is going to be to figure out how the heck do we get James Harden into our lineups, and Luka Doncic is also going to be there, and then you've got the Golden State guys also in the mix. But Wall and company really need to start getting wins. They have been an absolute disaster. They've lost their last couple games. On the flip side, you've got a Phoenix team that somehow has won their last 4 games. So Ernie Grunfeld's job is on the line for sure. Scott Brooks potentially, and then any sort of free agent's interest here is going to depend on the Wizards getting into the playoffs because, frankly, who wants to go to a crappy team? Looking at Wall, he has played heavy minutes in most games lately. It is not unreasonable to project him for 38 to 40 minutes, and then he probably has a tick or two of upside because there's nobody else that can really handle the ball. Ron Baker was recently signed, so he may be making his debut. Chasen Randall is technically the backup point guard, and Tomas Satoransky is in the mix there as well. So Wall should see strong minutes. Of course, his backcourt mate, Bradley Beal, will also be there. He actually plays a tick or two minutes more than John Wall, which is frightening because his lower legs are made out of, wet potato chips. Generally, he deals with stress fractures seemingly at least once per year. He's been running a heavy minutes load. Would not be surprised to see that rear its ugly head. Of course, we only have to worry about that happening in a game, so full speed ahead with him. He continues to just pour on the points, and he has averaged just shy of 30 points per game over the last 2 weeks, which is pretty exciting to see. He chips in a little bit there with some assists and other hustle helper stats along the way, making him a reasonable option in all formats. I don't know that he will be a core play, but the main reason for that for me on DraftKings is he is only 600 less than John Wall. Generally, we've been seeing more of a 15% separation in their price points, so that has been something that's driven me to play more Bradley Beal than John Wall. But today, I think I will be definitely looking for John Wall. Looking at the rest of the lineup, 5,300 for Trevor Ariza. He's going to slot in there as an excellent option, in my opinion. In his 2 games that he's played for the Wizards, he's played 38 and 36 minutes. He's averaging 17 points, 7 boards, 3.5 assists in that time, and he's had an amazing 9 steals. Now, we know that Phoenix is a little bit sloppy, and he's going to know, hey, their play, since he just was a member of the Suns just only a week ago, so it would not surprise me to see him have multiple steals in this one as he can jump the passing lanes, and he's practiced against these guys and scrimmaged against them for the better part of the last few months, so I do like him. That's kind of where my love for the Wizards ends. A little difficult to go to anybody in the front court for them. They're horrible. Do I want to take the opposing front court? You betcha. We'll transition to that in a second. But Jeff Green, Tomas Satoransky. Those guys are secondary plays at best. Sam Decker, keep in mind, he's had a couple decent games. A lot of that has had to do with just him getting minutes and sinking all of his shots. So in his last 3 games, he's shot 87, 50, and 67%. I don't think that will keep up. He just doesn't have consistent enough minutes to consider him a core play. If you're feathering things in for a mass multi-entry situation, I wouldn't hate it if he popped in there a few times. I would look to, I would make a rule if I was doing it on Cruncher, and I will be today, make a rule saying don't have, play only one of Jeff Green, Trevor Ariza, and Sam Decker, because I think those guys kind of bite into each other. Looking over here for the Phoenix side of things, of course, top of mind is going to be Devin Booker. He is someone I think that will be on the short list of the 5 guys you want to do what you can to get in your lineup. Of course, that could come at the expense of a John Wall or a Doncic or some of the Golden State guys, but he has just been outstanding since returning from his hamstring injury. In his last 3 games, he is averaging just a touch shy of 50 fantasy points per game. He is playing 37 minutes per game, and his shot really hasn't been falling as much as we would have liked to see over the course of the season. I thought that would improve somewhat, but he's been on a little bit of a heater, shooting nearly 50% in those 3 games. So that probably won't last, but this is the Wizards, who have one of the worst defenses in the league, so we definitely want to give strong consideration to Booker. The new guy, Kelly Oubre Jr., he came in off the bench, played 26 minutes in his debut, had 13 points, 6 boards, a couple hustle helper stats in the assists, blocks, and steals category there. Solid option and solid price, and who doesn't like a remember me game? Now, is this revenge? I don't know, because the Wizards weren't going to be able to afford him with their silly missteps of giving Otto Porter a max contract, which seemingly at the time they did have to match that offer sheet from Brooklyn, but they were not going to be able to keep Oubre because they are paying a boatload of money to Porter, Wall, and Beal. Oubre will get paid by somebody. Remains to be seen who, but I do like him in this particular matchup going against his former squad. He is 4,600 on DraftKings, and he is someone that I suspect will approach 25 to 30 fantasy points as a reasonable outcome. He tends to play with his emotions on his sleeve, and we're going to hope he goes into DGAF mode, because when he does that, he has a nice Kelly Oubre type game, something in the mid-teens for points, and then I think we'll see some crooked numbers for sure in the rebound category. Balancing between Oubre and Kevin Booker is TJ Warren. Now, here's a guy that had been dealing with injuries of his own, came back, was on a minutes limit, and then ended up getting tossed in his first game back, played only 12 minutes. The next game he got 24, and ever since then he has crested into the mid-30s, including the last 2 games, 36 and 39 minutes. So we're feeling completely safe with him. He's back in the starting lineup. He is taking a ton of shots, approaching 20 field goal attempts per game over his last 4, which is great to see, because we want guys that are going to get theirs if we're going to put them on our fantasy roster. So he is probably going to end up, I would say, on about 40% of my lineups would be my guess here. And I think he is somebody that is going to just feast against the lackadaisical Washington Wizards, particularly since they don't have Otto Porter. Josh Jackson is kind of an afterthought. DeAndre Ayton seemed to be at least hitting the rookie wall. He had said that himself, but his last couple games has averaged just over 40 fantasy points, including back-to-back 2010 games, with a magnificent 23 and 18 game against Boston in Boston for their last one. So that feels like preordained numbers that you can put in ink for your projections, getting him to 20 and 10. So he is a nice option. Josh Jackson he's hit or miss. We don't know exactly what's going on with all of the rotations here. He tends to get some of the minutes because they want to develop him, but he is very, very dependent on his scoring to get you his fantasy production. He has not been a great shooter in his career, and over his last few games is just around 38%. So that is your mileage may vary there. Of course, $5,000 price point. For a guy like that, generally he'll check in right around the 5 points per $1,000 on Fantasy Cruncher. So that's usually about where guys start falling out of your projections unless you have started adjusting what you want for your ownership cap and or done some tweaking with groups and rules, etc. to get these guys in here. Just checking for anybody else. DeAnthony Melton, he was the one guy that, at least through one game, seemingly took a bit of a minutes decrease with the arrival of Oubre. It's hard to tell what's going on. When he was starting 6-7 games ago, he was seeing in the mid-30s for a couple games. We got really excited about him. That has dropped dramatically, and he has just been averaging barely over 20 minutes per game, including just 16 with the arrival of Kelly Oubre. During that time, we saw Jamal Crawford sort of assert himself as being a point guard backup to Booker, and that was fun experience. In his last 4 games, he's had 5, 14, 7, and 5 assists, but his minutes are tenuous at best as well. So it makes things a little dicey if you're going to be banking on a, what is he, probably 37 years old, I believe. Shout out to Rainier Beach High School. He went to the same high school that Nate Robinson did out there in Seattle. But that would be guys that potentially feather into the lineups. Rashawn Holmes, perhaps. But I probably would say outside of Warren and Booker, who I think are very important plays, I would probably create a group saying I don't really want more than 1 or 2 of these other guys appearing in my mass multi-entry lineups, because it's just going to be a mess there, and we're not going to know what happens. Could any of them have a good game? Absolutely. Will they? Hard to tell. It is the Wizards. It is the highest scoring game, or highest projected game score on the night. So we shall see. All right. We'll see. Oh, Adam rebooting yet again. Adam, this isn't very fun. Oh, there you are. What's up, fella?
How's it going?
I've been talking for a while. I was talking so much I didn't even have time to have a little sip of my beverage, but was just hitting the highlights, and everybody's highlight is from like 3 seconds ago when you appeared and are here to save me. But I was hitting the highlights of the Wizards and Suns game. Quickly recap that one.
I was here for the entire Phoenix side. I agree with everything you said.
Well, there you go. All right. What about the Wizards here? Talk to me between Wall and Beal. Do you want both of them on the same team, or do you think that one per lineup is the way to go?
Really depends, I think, what you're doing with Phoenix. I mean, if you're running it back with, like if you're turning into a game stack, then obviously I'm fine having Wall and Beal. But individually, I don't really like having both, because I just don't think that either one are going to be priorities for me. Like, there's nothing wrong with either one, but I prefer Devin Booker to John Wall, for example. There is, a couple of options that I like a little bit better than Wall at similar price points. Same really goes for Bradley Beal, even though he should play a ton of minutes. So I expect to obviously have exposure to both guys, but neither one seems like a guy that's going to be a core play for me. And so it's pretty unlikely I'll end up with both of them in too many lineups.
All right, let's maneuver along here to our next game. Was there anything from Phoenix did you want to hit on? Who do you like outside of Booker and Warren?
I agreed with you. DeAndre Ayton's minutes have trended back up over the last couple of games as well, which was good to see. The most concerning thing with him had been that, basically coinciding with him saying that he had hit the rookie wall, was his minutes. Suddenly he's playing, even in games where he's not in foul trouble or anything, he was playing like 28 minutes, but we've seen 29 and 32 in the last couple of games. He's been really productive, really all season long, but recently as well. And this is a Washington team that, in addition to being terrible defensively, they are also terrible at rebounding. So I think DeAndre Ayton's in a good spot. And I agree with you on Kelly Oubre. Not that it's necessarily a revenge game, but it is the type of game where he should do well anyway. He's someone that he has games where he's very aggressive and other games where he's not, but getting into a fast-paced game against a poor defense that doesn't rebound well is just kind of the exact type of game that you like Kelly Oubre in. He had about a 22% usage rate in his first game with Phoenix. If he gets out there and gets, mid to upper 20s in minutes again, then I think he should be able to pay off that price tag. So, I agree with you entirely. Like Booker and Warren are the priorities. And then, Kelly Oubre makes for a decent value play. DeAndre Ayton gives you some upside at, a $7,200 tag.
All right, cruising along to our next game. We have Toronto in Philadelphia. Toronto is on a back-to-back. We know that Kyle Lowry is out, may miss another game or two. They've been a little cagey about that. Toronto is playing on Christmas, so we will have to see if he is back by then. Serge Ibaka is looking questionable. They knew he was not going to play in the back-to-back. He's dealing with a tender knee with some swelling, and the thought and hope was that they would get him to go against Embiid and the rest of Philadelphia, but they're not sure he's going to play. We should have information, I suspect, by shoot-around. Even if he comes in as a game-time decision, we'll have that before lock, as that is the game is tipping off 30 minutes prior or 30 minutes after the slate lock, so we should know about that. Danny Green probably going to be out as well. So depending on what happens with Ibaka, Monroe, Siakam come into play, it looks like Van Vliet is going to be playing heavy minutes once again. And then if Green's out, then DeLon Wright absolutely will play heavy minutes alongside him. They started in the backcourt last night. Would not be a shock for me to see Van Vliet play 38, 40 minutes in this game because they just don't have any other ball handlers. He's 5,900 on DraftKings. Adam, I have the silly little Fred Van Elite fan club contest. Hey, I won it 2 days ago and got second last night. I'm on a tear. At 5,900, will I be the only one playing Van Vliet, even if there's just a dearth of other options in the Toronto backcourt? That question scared Adam. Adam is going to think about that one and come back here. Are you with us, Adam? All right. So for that one, I think Van Vliet is somewhat intriguing, but he is not really popping in any of my crunches. I'm currently got Danny Green in there. This is just a first look. I suspect once I pull Danny Green out of that and adjust Van Vliet, he will start even at 5,900 to appear in my lineups, which is a somewhat terrifying thought. Adam, you're back. What do you got with DeLon Wright, Fred Van Vliet? Let's assume that Danny Green is in. Are either playable at their current price points?
Yeah, I don't like the 5,900 for Van Vliet, but when you look at his numbers without Lowry or Leonard on the floor, he's got a 23.5% usage rate this season. He's got a 38.8% assist percentage over 269 minutes, averaging basically a fantasy point per minute. It doesn't feel good paying like $6,000 for Van Vliet, but without Kawhi or Lowry on the floor, like the offense has to come from somewhere, whether it's scoring or facilitating. So I think that he ends up being a good play. Obviously, DeLon Wright's minutes are influenced by Danny Green, but with Kawhi out, you should see enough minutes for him to be a decent play anyway. If Green's out, then obviously that's even more minutes for Wright.
All right. Looking at the front court, let's assume Ibaka plays. How do you want to approach things going against Joel Embiid?
Yeah, if Ibaka plays, I love Ibaka. He's seen such a big boost without Kawhi on the floor this season. He's played 114 minutes without Kawhi or Lowry, has a 27.2% usage rate. He's averaged 1.12 DraftKings points per minute. And if you just look at his time without Kawhi, without adjusting for Lowry so that we can get a bigger sample size, you get 310 minutes with 1.35 DraftKings points per minute, a 28.2% usage rate. He's been incredibly productive without Kawhi out there. So obviously he's questionable for this game, but if he's in, he's only $5,700 on DraftKings. I think he's clearly one of the top plays on the slate.
All right, and then what about OG Anunoby in this this bit of a walking wounded for the Raptors?
Yeah, he's fine at a dirt cheap price tag. He's someone that I want to pay attention to ownership because I know like he had like a 22-point first quarter last night. He had a really good game, but he's not the type of guy that typically is going to put up a score that you have to win tournaments. He can certainly help you as a value play, but with guys like that kind of have median projections that are good point per dollar, but they don't have a lot of volatility or upside. Whenever they're popular, there's a bigger edge in just not playing them because if they do score, 25 fantasy points, it's not really helping you at high ownership anyway, because 20% of the field or whatever has them. But at the same time, that is committing a roster spot to only 25 points or so. And normally to win a tournament, you're going to need more than that. So I think that if he does end up being a popular play, which I kind of imagine he will be, he was 6% owned on a full 10-game slate last night. Now you have, more guys out and a smaller slate. He just seems like a guy that, in tournaments you can fade without much risk.
All right. I want to give a shout out to Derek Nolan saying Danny Green already out. The 9 o'clock news from Nick Nurse said he's hedging on doubtful. Generally on these shows where we have a little bit more time to walk through things through the DFS strategy, we will give you the take if they're in or if they're out. I don't think Danny Green is going to play, but heck, going into last night, I didn't think LeBron and Anthony Davis were going to play, and then all of a sudden this morning got to read a bunch of news with LeBron saying, oh, there was never a doubt I was going to miss this game. It's like, well, that would have been nice to know beforehand. So we got to make the decisions. We got to check and see what happens at lock, and a lot of times we're in here with panicked moments. We want to know which course of action we're ready to take, sort of like muscle memory. So we want to give you guys the contingency options for this one. Moving along here to the Philadelphia 76ers. What do you want to do? It sounds like the big three are all healthy. Embiid, Butler, and Simmons. Reasonably priced, $9,600 for Embiid, $8,500 for Simmons, but I think he's a solid, nice direct pivot away from John Wall or from Devin Booker. And then Jimmy Butler, not as exciting as we thought, not as fierce as we thought in joining the team, but we do have to remember it took Wade, Bosch, and LeBron a while to figure things out. Jimmy Butler's definitely a talented guy and will mesh in well with these guys. There's going to be some growing pains. How do you like the big three for the 76ers tonight?
Yeah, I mean, the price tag on Embiid has fallen, which is nice. He's obviously coming off of a couple of bad games, and we know that he's just not as effective, at least, as of yet, when Jimmy Butler's out there. Obviously, Butler siphons away some usage, but also you just get Embiid used a little bit differently. He's not as productive on a permanent basis, but there's still plenty of upside for him at, a $9,600 price tag. So I think that outweighs, concerns that I have. So he's my favorite guy out of those three. Simmons would be next just because, obviously he's a triple-double threat anytime he takes the floor. Toronto's not quite as good defensively without Kawhi, though OG is certainly a capable defender as well. But, not quite the same defensive team without Leonard out there. So I think Simmons is fine. Butler, obviously he has games that he takes over, and that gives him some upside. But out of the three, the only one that I could see really ending up being a priority for me would be Embiid, just because the price tag's fallen so far.
All right, so we're looking at a 7.5 point advantage here for Philadelphia at home with Toronto dinged up and coming off the back-to-back. What chat's kind of asking here, who do you think Butler is going to guard with the top two dogs out for the Raptors? That's a good question. It seems like overkill for him to guard anybody in that backcourt since he's such a better
I don't think it matters that much anyway. He's just not really that good. But probably either Van Vliet or Siakam.
Oh, I didn't think about Siakam. Okay. All right, that's intriguing. Mike Muscala, somebody we mentioned on the podcast, or I did anyway. Adam, 9 of his last 10 games, he has top 20 DraftKings points. Wilson Chandler out of the mix. He could be an early discount dandy here. Thoughts on Muscala, or maybe a potential blowout mop-up duty for McConnell or Landry Shamet?
Yeah, I think Muscala is a good value play. Without Wilson Chandler, that does give him more minutes. We see him basically back up Joel Embiid and then also pick up minutes at the 4 on most nights. So without Chandler, I expect there to be more minutes there for him. He's inexpensive. He's another guy that, normally he's not going to give you, 30 plus raw points, which means that if he's super popular, it's okay to fade him. But I do think that it's a very reasonable value play. It does open up a lot, especially on a slate where, obviously we haven't talked about it, but you have James Harden in an absolutely phenomenal spot. You have other guys to pay up for as well. So, the value is certainly helpful. I think that you probably get somewhere around 28 minutes from Mike Muscala here.
All right, let's move along here to our next game. Milwaukee on the back-to-back. They're heading to Miami to enjoy a little pre-holiday festivities after the game tonight. I am sure they're actually 3-point favorites. Breaking down the Milwaukee side, does not look like we are worried about anybody with injuries, and nothing has popped here outside of Ersan Ilyasova, who did undergo successful surgery on his nose Friday for, I think it was displaced cartilage, displaced fracture, I don't know, something like that. I'm not a doctor. And then Brogdon's back. He missed a couple games earlier this week with the sore hamstring, but he should be theoretically good to go. It is a back-to-back, so he would be the only one that I would be slightly concerned about. We should have news after shoot-around. Talk to me about the Bucks here. Giannis looked pretty darn good last night in that game against Boston.
Yeah, I mean, Giannis obviously is always a viable option. The guy's just so involved as far as scoring goes, rebounding, assists. He picks up defensive stats. He does everything. He plays big minutes in competitive games. It's a Miami team that is actually playing pretty fast this season and not that good defensive. They're not that well defensively. The problem for Giannis is that I just need a big ownership gap between him and Harden to really want to consider it, because Harden to me is just in a completely different class than anyone else on the slate. So that's really where it gets tough to get up to Giannis for me. Chris Middleton, I still think is underpriced. We've been talking about him a lot lately. He's still sitting at $6,500 on DraftKings. This is a guy with a 25% usage rate over the last month that also contributes assists, contributes rebounds, plays around 34 minutes a night. He's been shooting incredibly poorly. Starting to snap out of it a couple of good games in a row, but over the last month or so has just been shooting really, really poorly, much worse than he did the first half of this, or the first month of this season, much worse than he did last season. And the price tag has come down to account for it. And anyone looking at game logs stays away from him as well. So you get a really nice situation where, like last night, he was 2% owned because of his recent performances, but you get a nice spot where the price tag has come down way lower than it really should be for his upside, and ownership comes down because of recent games. So I still have interest in Middleton. Bledsoe, I think, is okay. It isn't the greatest matchup just because you do have, pretty solid rim protection from Miami. Bledsoe obviously is most effective when he's getting to the rim. So I like Middleton more than Bledsoe for that reason.
All right. Amongst the, I don't even want to call them secondary plays, the tertiary plays here, we've got Brogdon, you've got Brook Lopez, who is no stranger to Hassan Whiteside. Anybody else here from Milwaukee that even you like at a passing glance?
Yeah, I think that $4,400 Brook Lopez gives you plenty of upside. Obviously the minutes kind of come and go. This is a team that can go really small with Giannis at the 5. They have DJ Wilson that can play as well. But Whiteside is a much better rim protector than he is an actual defender away from the basket. And I think that Lopez can take advantage of that. And there's just not a lot of risk in a $4,400 price tag. It sounds small, but even if he were like, 4,800 or 5,200 or something, I think it would be much less appealing. But down here at 4,400, it's just so difficult for him to really hurt you. And he certainly can go out there and give you, 30 plus fantasy points.
All right, let's use the pivot as the pivot over to Hassan Whiteside. So last 4 games against Brook Lopez. Now 3 of these are with Brooklyn and 1's with LA. He's obviously with the new team, but this is one of the matchups where his style of play, Brook Lopez anyway, has not changed, nor has Hassan Whiteside's. Looking at from the most recent, going back to January of last year, we've got 19 minutes, 25 minutes, 30 minutes, 21 minutes there for Whiteside. 13, 29, 29, and 11 DraftKings points. Feels a little bit risky here, Adam, to consider Whiteside in this one. What do you want to do?
Yeah, so I mean, I think it is risky from a minute standpoint, not only because him defending Lopez isn't really his strong suit, but also like I mentioned when talking about Lopez, this Milwaukee team can play small, and if you get a real small ball lineup, we know that Spoelstra's not going to leave Whiteside out there. Even against more traditional centers, it's really been hit or miss on if Whiteside plays the fourth quarter this season. So I don't have confidence in him playing more than like 24 to 26 minutes, but where I still think it's really appealing is that I think they should be really productive minutes for a couple of reasons. For one, obviously he could lose some rebounding because of Brook Lopez, pulling him away from the basket, but he also should be more efficient in grabbing the rebounds when he is around the basket. So I think it's a perfectly fine rebounding spot. But also, you're talking about facing Giannis and facing Eric Bledsoe, two guys that are going to look to get to the rim, as much as they possibly can, and it gives extra block upside to Whiteside. Obviously it's not a huge point, but he's faced Giannis 3 times since the start of last season. He has games with he had 1 block in. Sorry, I just refreshed it. So going back to the start of the 2016 season now, he's faced Giannis 7 times. Whiteside has. He has 6 blocks in 2 of those 7 games. He has 4 blocks in another. So obviously just monster block upside in this spot. It's not going to always happen, but it's there. Didn't play a lot of minutes in some of those games, but on a point per minute basis has still been really good. The price tag has come down. Ownership, I assume, will come down just because he hasn't been playing a lot of minutes. So it's certainly not someone that I want to look to in cash games. There's just more volatility than I would like. But in tournaments, he doesn't need to do a whole lot or play. He doesn't need to play 32 minutes to really pay off a $6,600 price tag.
That is an excellent point. I mean, 6 blocks over there on Yahoo or FanDuel, 3 points per. That adds up really, really quick. Reminder, if you have not yet signed up for Yahoo, you can use the promo code OSMO and get a $30 deposit match up to your first $30 deposited with your initial deposit. That's a lot of talk about deposits, but if you have not yet played over on their DFS site, even if you already have a fantasy account there or any account at Yahoo like most of us do, since it's been around forever and was the gold standard 2 decades ago, if you have not deposited yet on your DFS side, you can do so and use the promo code OSMO, and it'll get you $30. That comes out in Yahoo player points, which are available for immediate use and entry into the contest. They are running back the Week 16 $1 million baller, where they are guaranteeing $250,000 in overlay. That means they are bringing in the equivalent of players to pay for $750,000, and they're going to pay out $1 million. Very exciting there. You'll definitely want to jump in. That is going to fill. Nearly filled last week, much to kind of the surprise of everyone. They're running it back. They're also doing the same thing, the biggest tournament they've ever run, 5 times bigger than anything they've run for NBA. Christmas Day, they're running a $1 million baller contest. Same thing, $20 price point, but 10 entry max. So check that out. We do have projections behind the paywall here for Yahoo. We have Alex's personal grades for each of the players as well for basketball and football. So you definitely want to check that out. And then if you're still dabbling just a little bit, you've got the free article on the homepage giving you some differentiation plays for that Week 16 $1 million baller. Again, promo code OSMO for $30 on your first deposit. Alrighty. I see someone was mentioning Wayne Ellington in chat. Ellington's not going to see the court. He's only played in 3 of their last 8 games, a grand total of 27 minutes. We need Wade to be out, which, hey, he may be, taking an early Christmas holiday himself, or Tyler Johnson to get a migraine, etc. But Ellington's probably not going to be in anybody's plans. Who are going to be in your plans amongst the Miami Heat, Adam?
I want to go right back to Kelly Olynyk. He only played 22 minutes against Houston, but certainly has a path to more minutes, especially if he's playing well. Justice Winslow did not practice yesterday, missed their game against Houston, questionable for tonight's game. If he's out, that kind of just helps. I mean, it's one less body that Miami has. Winslow has been playing plenty of point without Dragic anyway, so it opens the door for Tyler Johnson and Dwayne Wade to play more minutes, but it also helps to solidify those minutes at the 4 for Kelly Olynyk. And he's someone that contributes in more ways than just scoring. He's a capable shooter, but he also can rebound, he also can pass, and I think he's just a little bit cheaper than he should be. And by the same token, if you're not playing Whiteside, Bam Adebayo at 4,600 is appealing because we know that he's basically a point per minute producer. He is the center when Whiteside is not. So if Whiteside only plays 24 minutes, you're probably getting about 24 minutes from Adebayo as well, which does give him a little bit of upside, as well. So really just the cheap front court guys there in addition to Whiteside with Adebayo and more importantly Kelly Olynyk.
All right, ready to move on to our next one here.
Yeah, so I mean, I guess Josh Richardson deserves a mention just because he should play like 38 minutes. The price tag is pretty fair, I think. So it's not a core play, but certainly has plenty of upside and a decent floor if he's going to play about 38 minutes.
All right, let's talk Spurs. This one is back-to-back. The Spurs put a whomping on Minnesota last night, 124-98. Looking at the starters, nobody played over 32 minutes. That was DeRozan. Aldridge only played 23 minutes. Rudy Gay with 19. That, of course, is their big three, so they should be a full go on this back-to-back as they head into Houston. Houston, we do know that Chris Paul is out. He could miss between 2 and 4 weeks, or what the early estimates are. And Houston has already said that they don't plan on playing him in back-to-backs going forward in order to manage his tender hamstring, which has plagued him many times over the last 2 seasons. Starting here with the Spurs big three, how do you want to look at these guys? Let's go with the double D's first, Adam.
His DraftKings price tag is just egregious. Obviously, the Spurs have been in blowouts basically every single game they've played for the last month, it feels like. And you've seen that really have an impact on the price tags, especially for DeRozan and for LaMarcus Aldridge. DeRozan's at 8,200 on FanDuel, which is still too cheap. But 7,700 on DraftKings is just kind of insane. You're talking about a guy with a 30+% usage rate who also leads the team with a 28.5% assist percentage over the last month. And in competitive games, he plays 36 to 38 minutes. This is a game with, a 5-point spread. He didn't play a bunch of minutes last night. Houston is not a good team when they're missing one of Harden or Paul. So it's just kind of difficult to see this being a spot, or at least to predict it being a spot where either team blows out the other. So maybe we finally get a competitive Spurs game where DeRozan plays 36 to 38 minutes, and it just is way too cheap of a price tag for him. So I absolutely love DeMar DeRozan. Aldridge, I think, is underpriced as well. He's 7,600 on DraftKings. It's just that between the two of them, if they're going to be the same price, I prefer DeRozan. On FanDuel, you have 7,800 or 7,900 for LaMarcus Aldridge, which is obviously very, very appealing, where you have to roster the two power forwards.
All right, couple housekeeping notes here. We've got a bunch of stuff in the can already on the YouTube channel. When you're done watching this one, you can dip on over there. We have On the Contrary with Chris Spags, Evan Silva, and Alex Baker. You guys know him better as Osmo. That has been posted. We also have three fellas talking football. That would be Adam, Laffy, and that would be Andrew, Laffy, and Ben talking Saturday contests. Of course, we have 2 NFL games today, starting at 4:30, and then again, I think at 8 o'clock this evening. And then we've got the Osmo Odds Show with Ben Rosso breaking down some betting options throughout the weekend. So if you are into sports wagering, and I suspect a lot of you are, you can check that one out as well. We will have a live before lock tonight with Fast Eddie Fear before that'll go off around 6 o'clock before the 7 o'clock tip-off. And then starting tomorrow at 11, we have Ben and Laffy breaking down the NFL slate, and then Chris Baggs and Josh Engel will take you down the home stretch up until lock, as we are in week 16. Hardly feels like we've cruised through 4 months of NFL, but here we are with 2 weeks to go. Remember, you can want to look and see what people are playing for with regards to the playoffs and any contract incentives, plus any Pro Bowl snubs. Looking at you there, Alvin Kamara. Moving here to the other side of this tilt, we have Houston. We have James Harden at 11,600, Adam. In my initial crunches, with just more or less baseline projections, slightly goosed to account for Chris Paul being out, I'm not getting Harden on either site. What are you going to do? How do you approach that when you know he's someone you really, really want to play? You like the situation, and you want to get him in your lineups. Talk a little bit about your strategy to build via Optimizer in situations where we have the price per dollar is just not going to pop for us.
Well, I mean, it does pop for me because I adjusted his projections, so they're not my baseline.
Yeah. Show off. Okay. For us mere mortals, what do you do?
Well, I mean, if he's not getting in my lineups, then I don't end up with him. But I wouldn't force him in if I didn't think he was like the best play. But if you put in the numbers, like he's played 419 minutes without either one of Paul or Carmelo Anthony on the floor this year. He's got a 42% usage rate, a 56.5% assist percentage, and he's averaged 1.78 DraftKings points per minute over 419 minutes. He's facing a San Antonio team that, while they don't play fast, they don't play very good defense either. And on top of the increase in his rates, we saw when Paul was out last time that in competitive games, Harden barely goes to the bench. He was playing 42, 44 minutes in competitive games. So you get a little bit of an uptick in the minutes as well. He's just in a totally different ballpark for me on this slate. Using DraftKings as just for context, I have Harden right now projected for 73 points compared to like 56 for Giannis and, or I guess like 58 for Giannis and like 55 for Embiid. It's just not even close for me.
That is, a projected 73 points. This is what makes things fun. What overall percentage would you go into if you were doing some mass multi-entry? Let's say you're doing 10 lineups, 100 lineups to make it a nice round number. Do you want to go in 70, 80% Harden? Do you want to go higher and just hope other people make the mistake of not playing him?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't run my spreadsheet yet to see where I actually will cap him at, but I imagine it's going to be really high. Like, I don't have an issue with just having him everywhere, outside of obviously you're taking on a lot of risk by doing that. But I would be very surprised if Harden isn't like my highest owned player on this league.
All right. And this is the one thing that it's a preview of kind of what we'll see, and we're seeing it now, but normally we would see this, post All-Star break, flu season hits, the NBA, the malaise, the lackadaisicalness comes in as teams start angling to tank and get the more ping pong balls. You get a lot of people talking price per dollar, which when you have a lot of value popping, it makes it an entirely different equation, an entirely different strategy. And we've seen, if you play on DraftKings someone like Muscala, potentially DeLon Wright, a couple other guys here, maybe we get some love here from the Dallas backcourt, depending on what happens. It's not as hard to get these aces into your lineup now. Harden probably for this particular situation should be, what do you think, 12,100 feels about where he ought to be. Do you think we'll see him crest over the 12,000 mark with Chris Paul out?
Yeah, I mean, I think we will. Like, he's 11-6 on DraftKings now, so I imagine he gets there. But I mean, I would probably be, obviously depending on matchup and slate and everything, but like trying to think of a price tag where with Harden in this situation where I looked at it and my initial thought was like, oh, he's probably too expensive. Like, he'd have to get to like 13K, I think.
Yeah, I mean, and at that point, you got 8 players, he's 20% of the cap. It's like,
right?
Yeah, okay, I can still make it work. Hey, Wayne Ellington, can you play tonight?
Yeah, I mean, when Paul is out, it's basically Russell Westbrook sans Kevin Durant from like 3 seasons ago or 4 seasons ago, however long it was, when, it was basically just, Westbrook was pushing like 14K and it was like, I really don't want to pay this, but also I don't want to lose all my money. So I kind of have to pay this. That's how I feel about Harden when Chris Paul's out.
That's fair. Fun note. I was looking it up because you think Russell Westbrook, all the triple doubles, etc. And I saw in the news that LeBron had his 76th last night going against Anthony Davis, and I said, well, gosh, where's that going to be on the all-time list? So LeBron is 6th now with 76. He's 2 behind Wilt Chamberlain. Jason Kidd is 4th at 107, and of course, Oscar Robinson, the all-time guy, at 181. Magic Johnson, surprisingly, 138. Westbrook, 112. I hadn't realized, I mean, you always thought of Magic and how amazing he was, but I didn't realize he had that many triple-doubles because we're seemingly just seeing Westbrook do this constantly. Now, of course, he had a longer career and more time to do it in, but Westbrook's going to catch those guys, barring injury. But it's kind of interesting. The random guy on the list, one spot ahead of James Harden in 8th place, Lafayette Lever. Fat Lever, 43 triple-doubles. Now, he was a guy who played a long time with the Nuggets, and his triple-doubles were damn near 10-10-10. But he was a feisty shooting guard, combo guard. So, anyway, there's your old guy history lesson. Looking outside of Harden, perhaps Capella. Eric Gordon has been priced up on DraftKings to 6,100. Gerald Green has been infuriating. He's 3,700. We're on the potential quest for value here. What do you have with the rest of the Rockets?
I like Capella. The price tag's still inexpensive. You're still getting him playing a ton of minutes when he's not in foul trouble and in competitive games. And he's averaged almost 1.2 DraftKings points per minute without Paul or Anthony on the floor this season. He's obviously very effective in the pick and roll with James Harden. They work very well together. So I like Capella a lot. Eric Gordon, to me, the price tag just more than makes up for any benefit he's getting here. The first thought is always that when one of these guys is out, especially when Paul's out, that you'll get time with Eric Gordon on the floor without either of Harden or Paul, and he's very, very productive in those minutes. And while that's true, when James Harden's going to play 40 plus minutes in a competitive game, that only leaves a maximum of like 8 minutes where Eric Gordon's out there by himself. Other than that, he's going to be out there with James Harden, which still means that he's basically a guy who has to score because he's not getting assists, not getting rebounds. He's played 369 minutes without Paul or Melo on the floor this year, and that's combining the time that he's been out there with Harden and the time he's been out there by himself. He's averaged 0.7 fantasy points per minute. It's just still not much of a boost for Gordon because Harden plays so many minutes. It's certainly not enough to justify him jumping up to like a 6K price tag.
All right, Premium Slack Demo saying, EMAC, you're surprised that Magic was that high on the triple-double list? I think I forgot is a better way. He was, of course, one of my favorite players, him and Larry Bird, and then of course Jordan came along, and the Hakeem Olajuwon days, etc. I just in the perspective of how we are just pour over the numbers now, the mythical Oscar Robertson averaging a triple double, and then seeing Westbrook do it, now potentially from multiple seasons, it's kind of skewed perspective. But the other thing it does remind you of, even with Westbrook averaging, 70 plus games in that season, the triple double, he still only has 112. You forget that it's to get in each category is harder than hell to do it. And I think it's just, kind of a Hall of Fame list here. I think everybody actually is in the Hall of Fame except potentially Lafayette Lever on this one. But anyway, yes and no, but these are the fun records you like to look at. It's always hard to tell with like scoring and things that have gone over such a long time, home runs, touchdown, passing yards, etc., because the game evolves and changes throughout time. So it's just a different perspective here, but sometimes you want to see the forest for the trees, and vice versa. Anything left in our battle of Texas teams?
Yeah, I think that going to some of the value on Houston, it's kind of a guessing game who it's going to be. I imagine that D'Antoni could very easily just ride the hot hand here. But in the last game with Paul, with Paul injured, Gerald Green started the second half. He ended up playing 25 minutes total for the game. He's inexpensive, and he's someone that he's scoring dependent too. Kind of like Eric Gordon, but he's $3,700 instead of $6,100. You can certainly get a good enough game out of Gerald Green. Brandon Knight played 17 minutes in that game. He only played about 8 minutes in the second half without Paul. So I think that the natural assumption that Brandon Knight just soaks up a ton of minutes here isn't necessarily correct. Like they don't need to replace Chris Paul with a point guard. They have James Harden. They have Eric Gordon already. So it doesn't have to be Brandon Knight, but it certainly could be, especially if he's playing well. You could get 22, 23 minutes. So they're all just guys that you shouldn't have a lot of confidence in. Daniel House as well, but you shouldn't have a lot of confidence in them. But it wouldn't be surprising at all if one of these guys does go out and have a pretty good game at a cheap price tag. So rotating them through if you're playing a bunch of tournament lineups is certainly a nice way to go.
And that's a good call out on Brandon Knight. I read something, I think it was 2 days ago, how they were talking that their plans were to continue to bring him along slowly. If he played in the mid-teens each game, that was fine by them. They want him healthy. And there was a different article that was saying that they would consider packaging him with a number one to get in some help at a different position for Harden and Paul. Now, this was before Chris Paul went down, but they are, of course, viewing Knight as an asset because he was, when healthy and when he had various starting roles, he was a terrific player. What are they going to get for it? Because he has just been snake bit with the injury bug. for the last couple seasons. So thank you for pointing that one out, Adam. That's good for us to remember that it's not necessarily going to be a plug and play. And if we didn't know those little nuggets about what Houston was looking at with regards to Brandon Knight, we might just assume he's going to see 25 plus minutes, and I doubt that will be the case.
Yeah, I mean, just think about Michael Carter-Williams the last time this happened. Like the first day that Chris Paul was out, you had a ton of analysts saying, oh, Michael Carter-Williams has to play 28 minutes at point guard. Like, one, he's not playing point guard. Two, he doesn't need to play those minutes because it's essentially a wing position. It's not they don't need to replace Chris Paul. So, and I'm seeing Brandon Knight projected for minutes into the 20s here, and I just think that's high because unless he's out there playing really, really well, they don't need him out there. They can go with Gerald Green, they can go with House, and the ball is going to be in James Harden's hands regardless.
All excellent points. 2 more games to go here. We've got the third Texas team. Dallas is heading into Golden State. We have a 227 over under here. That is the second highest on the night behind Phoenix and Washington. We are speculating that Dennis Smith Jr. is going to be out with his wrist injury. He has just played once in their last 8 games. Calling up my notes here. Max Kleber's back from his toe injury. He played only 8 minutes in the return. You've got Dirk Nowitzki playing 6 to 10 minutes, and then popping up on the injury list is Wesley Matthews, who is now questionable with a sore foot. Let's start off with Luka, the 19-year-old wonderkin. Adam, this is pretty damn impressive watching him play. He is, we were joking on the podcast, he is now steadily producing 50 fantasy points per game. Wow. 8,400. Do not be shy about that price tag. He is going to be an intriguing guy to look at compared to Wall, Beal, etc., other players in that price range. How are you looking at Doncic this evening?
So the problem with Doncic, now that he's expensive, it has nothing to do with his production. It has to do with who he's priced around and the minutes that he plays. Normally from most of these Mav starters, but from Doncic, you're going to get 32 to 34 minutes, which obviously is fine. But when you talk about Doncic being almost the same price point as Bradley Beal, who probably plays like 40 minutes if the game's competitive, more expensive than DeMar DeRozan, who should play around 38 if the game's competitive, similarly priced to Devin Booker, who probably plays close to 38 minutes. It starts to get tough just because you're comparing him to other very productive point per minute guys that are slotted into more minutes than him. So, it's not to say that he can't go out there and have a good game for his price tag. It's just obviously more difficult to get that in 32 to 34 minutes than it is in 36 to 38. So that's what will keep me from prioritizing Doncic. It has nothing to do with him. I still think he's perfectly fine, especially you do have guard and forward eligibility on DraftKings, which is appealing. It's just that I don't imagine he'll really pop in my lineups for that reason.
All right, I see the ever-popular, hey, Harrison Barnes, he's going to want some payback here for the Dubs. Or from the Dubs. In his last 7 games against the Warriors, that's stretching back over the last 3 seasons, he is averaging just over 31 minutes per game and about 30, let's call it 32, 33 fantasy points DraftKings scoring. So just running those numbers off, and they're not eye-popping. 35, 33, 29, 27, 15, 37, 37. Your mileage may vary, of course, and I still think he's a solid play, but what are you projecting Barnes for this evening? For me, it feels like something in the 30 to 31 fantasy points feels about right.
Yeah, I mean, I have him right now in 34 minutes at about between like 28 and 30 fantasy points or DraftKings points. He does get a usage bump without Dennis Smith Jr. He's at 26% this year without Dennis Smith on the floor, about 0.94 DraftKings points per minute, which obviously is fine. But he doesn't contribute a ton else, in terms of rebounding or assists. He's down to, a 6.5% rebounding percentage, about a 5.5% assist rate. So, it's still kind of scoring dependent, and it caps his upside a little bit. So if I get to him, it's fine, especially on FanDuel where you have to roster the 2 small forwards, but it's not someone I'm really excited about.
Yeah, and at 5,800 for that maybe 30 fantasy point projection, he's going to be below 5 points per thousand, and that's kind of the break point where people start falling out of your lineup, even on the short slates. He is only top 25 DraftKings points 3 of his last 9 games. There's not any upside there. This is like he and Thaddeus Young are two guys where I always like, I don't really want to roster them. And then when they have their good games, I say, well, that's all right. They're going to have a bunch of less than stellar outings, and I feel that way about Barnes. Both very fine players, play a ton of minutes, but they need everything to go right for them. They need their shot to fall. They need to luck into some steals, etc. So there we go. With that, looking up and down here, anybody else that you would consider for Dallas in this up-tempo matchup? What about DeAndre Jordan? How does he match up?
Yeah, I think DeAndre is fine. Obviously, I don't even know if limited upside is the right word, but you're probably only going to get like 32 or 33 minutes from him. The minutes shouldn't be a concern because of the matchup, though. Obviously, people always talk about when you have a traditional center, the really easy thing to do is people just immediately say, "Oh, Golden State's going to run them off the floor. Golden State's going to go small, whatever." Jordan hasn't had an issue staying on the floor. His last 3 games against Golden State, one this year with Dallas, he played 31 minutes, 32 minutes, and 37 minutes in the 2 prior to that. So yeah, I mean, the minutes have been fine for him. It's not a spot where he should find his way to the bench because of the matchup. Obviously, he should grab plenty of rebounds. It's just that he's a good but not great play for me. I haven't projected for like 36 DraftKings points right now.
All right. And these two teams have played once this year. I think he had just changed the page. We had like 29 DraftKings points in 30 minutes. But I was calling a popcorn machine here because I'm always curious to see, does he close? Because depending on the matchup, sometimes he won't. He actually closed out this game. And Dallas actually won 112-109. That was a game back when Curry and Draymond Green were out. Those guys, of course, will dramatically change the face of tonight's action. But looking at his time with the Clippers, going against Golden State, generally he played 32 to 34 minutes on average, and it looks like he got probably around the same number of fantasy points. Did have a couple really good games, a couple dogs in there, but relatively seemingly solid. So for tonight, my estimation is he's not really going to put anything on the table, but I don't think he's going to take anything off in this particular matchup. So I won't be looking to him, but if he ends up in my lineups, I'm not going to hate it.
Yeah.
Golden State.
I think.
Oh, go ahead.
What'd you say?
Oh, I was just saying.
I was going to say, I think JJ Barea is.
You first, Jinx. Buy me a Coke. Okay, I'm going to be quiet. Go out.
JJ Barea, I think, is interesting. Only 4,700 on DraftKings. He actually closed out that game against the Clippers over Jalen Brunson, played 27 minutes. You can't project him for 27, but Jalen Brunson's just not a good enough player, I don't think, to keep JJ Barea off the floor. We know that Barea is really productive when he does play. If you get 20 to 22 minutes from Barea at this price tag, it's obviously not ideal, but it's probably not the end of the world. If he goes out there and gets you like 26 minutes, though, it becomes a really good value play.
All right. Another question here from Premium Chat. Demo is asking, and this is a good one. So this is a little math exercise, a little simulation exercise. So he says, each slate we talk about the Las Vegas over and under. Is there a resource where we can see how accurate the Las Vegas projections are, the next day or after the results are in? He said, for example, yesterday, Detroit and Charlotte was projected at 219 points, but finished at 184. I'm just curious if there's something that tracks this. I suspect there probably is out there. A little elbow grease with the Google will hook you up with something, because this is something people love to track. Stat geeks, stat nerds, I'm sure people going for their mathematical PhDs have written dissertations about this. So the thing you want to remember with regards to when you have a projected score, you're taking a variety of outcome simulations and scenarios and saying it's going to be this one. Now, generally, that is the most common occurrence. So you can look at, mean, median, and mode. What is the mean? That is the average. What is the median? That's whatever's in the middle. So you could have, 1, 2, and 100, and your median would be 2, and your average would be, 34. Okay, that's like wildly different outcomes. So you always want to be careful what you're looking at here. When you get into projections and simulations, they take the most likely outcome. But of course, anything can happen within the broad spectrum of things. this is where Adam starts to perk his ears up. Standard deviation, variance, things like that come into play. Adam, I know you and Josh have been tweaking your models to embrace some standard deviations and randomness. Do you want to expound a little bit about that for just so people can kind of wrap their heads around the comparison of the here's the over-under and then here's what happened?
Yeah, I mean, and I don't have off the top of my head where to find it, but like you said, you can certainly on the internet you can find back tested, Vegas information and how much it tends to vary. But yeah, I mean, as far as just using projections in general, not specifically talking about Vegas, it is important to keep in mind how certain players, and it goes back to the question about Vegas, like how much does it tend to be off from the actual mean, and it's important to keep that in mind for different players too, and that's kind of what we're referring to when we talk about upside or floor or stuff like that. In consistency, it's some players are more volatile and that gives them a higher ceiling. That's something you want to factor in because everyone has similar mean projections these days. Like they're just so easy to have access to that if you're just playing and using median projections for players and using that to create your lineups, you're not doing yourself any favors because you're just going to be so similar to everyone else. If you're factoring in things like how volatile they are and how much they tend to be, off their mean and by how far, then it just gives you different lineup creations and it'll show you where, depending on the format you're playing, what types of players you should actually be targeting. So it is a really good question, I think, and it is important
in
any sort of projection.
Yeah, and that's why I wanted to spend a little bit of time on that because it's a great question, very complex answer, but it's kind of what we talk about all the time, and good references there for ceiling, floor, consistency, upside, the buzzwords that we throw around here from DFS. We generally have kind of all landed on them sort of groupthink and consensus. And if you're new to seeing these shows or reading the content, you may not know what all of that stuff means, but it's just a quicker and easier way of talking about more abstract mathematical concepts on that one. So, Monta Ellis, Swaggy P, Wayne Ellington, those are guys with wildly varying outcomes in their games. Wildly. LeBron, pretty solid. Harden, pretty solid. Harrison Barnes, Thaddeus Young, pretty solid. They stay within their general their range. So that's the standard deviation. So anyway, let's get on over here to the Golden State Warriors. Steph Curry, Kevin Durant, Draymond Green, Klay Thompson, all intriguing. I've been ran the little projections here. Both sites seem to love Kevin Durant, even now that I've tweaked the He's popping up now that I have tweaked Harden to 67 fantasy points. I'm still getting Durant as my second most popular play here. Looking a lot like a stars and scrubs kind of night, Adam. So often it is when we get the injuries and changes in rotation situations, etc. What are you going to do here with the core four with the Dubs? We're going to go a little off the board. Let's talk about the $6,400 Klay Thompson and the $6,300 Draymond Green. Those are some intriguing prices for us.
Yeah, I think the two less expensive guys here with Klay and Draymond, it's not to say that there isn't plenty of upside for Curry and Durant at sub 10K prices. There always is. But I just think that Klay
and Draymond...
former
MVPs, Adam, come on, let's give them their due and proper.
But I mean, with Klay and Draymond, I just think that they're too cheap, especially for guys who are kind of blowout proof too. They generally start the fourth quarter. They lose fewer minutes than Steph does if this game does get out of hand. But Thompson, since Curry's return, they've played 9 games. Thompson still has a 25.5% usage rate, and we know with this Golden State team that they will kind of feed the ball to whoever has the hot hand that night. So it gives extra upside for Thompson, and it makes him, like we were talking about, a little bit more volatile than some other players. So I think that Thompson's my favorite play here. But then you do have Draymond at only 6,300, probably plays around 32 minutes, does a little bit of everything, probably averages close to a fantasy point per minute here, maybe a little bit over. So no issue with him either, but I prefer Klay.
All right. The two spendy guys here. Not so spendy when you compare them to Harden, but they sort of mute each other's upside. I generally set a rule when I've got Golden State and I know that they're going to appear in my player pool. I will probably say don't play any more than one of these guys. meaning Harden, or pardon me, meaning Durant and Curry. And I potentially will even say that put Draymond in there. I'm not as concerned about Clay because I'm willing to embrace his potential upside if he's feeling the or if he's making all the shots. But what are you going to do with regards to these two former MVPs?
Yeah, I mean, I like the price tag on Durant. He's cheaper. You get a little bit higher usage rate for Curry, but Durant, obviously, when he's hot, he'll keep getting shots. So I like both of them. It's just that I don't think either one will end up being a priority.
All right. Different question in chat. They're saying if Wesley Matthews is out, do you think that JJ Barea will get the start tonight? Now, Barea hasn't started at all this season, so I don't think he will. They like him with his role coming off the bench, running the second unit. He is a great guy at penetrating, giving the dishes or getting the shots himself. He's very efficient and has one hell of an upside for the limited minutes that he plays. But when he tends to get a lot more minutes, it doesn't always translate into additional fantasy points as I don't know what the part. Well, he ends up, if he's going against a lot of the starters, etc. It changes his role, changes everything. I don't think they're going to start him, but who would they start? Because we already know that Brunson will be in the starting lineup with DSJ out. But I'm trying to figure. I mean,
Dorian Finney-Smith.
It will. Okay, I didn't think it would be Devin Harris unless he was going to get the Raul Neto ceremonial start for a few minutes, but okay, DFS. I mean, JJ Barea basically splits point guard minutes with either Dennis Smith Jr. or Jalen Brunson. He doesn't play a whole lot alongside either of them. When Matthews is out, you tend to see more minutes for Dorian Finney-Smith, basically slotting in, and then Luka, having the ball in his hands more. Would that put Dorian Finney-Smith into consideration at all with the 6-game slate?
I mean, if you want someone to go run around the court for 28 minutes and hopefully steal a couple passes and make a couple shots, then sure, like, he's cheap. He's going to play, 28, 30 minutes, but he's like a 0.7 fantasy point per minute guy.
All right, here's his. So I've called up in since mid-November. He has made 7 starts. In those starts, I'm not going to look and see who was out, but he's played 28 minutes, 23 fantasy points. The next stretch, he was playing between 30 and 38 minutes. He topped out at 28 fantasy points. So your mileage may vary. He is cheap. Minutes are helpful, but as Adam mentioned, the 0.7 fantasy points per minute, you need to get a bunch of minutes for that to happen. So if he is starting, yes, there is potential there, and he could be a differentiation play, but we'll want to remember to not get stars in our eyes when it comes to that DFS. Final game of the night, our nightcap, we have the Thunder going against Utah in Utah. We're looking at some of the past games here that Westbrook has had against Utah, just for perspective. Now, they played once this year. They played 2 weeks ago, and Utah actually lost. That was in Oklahoma City, 122-113. Westbrook had 45 DK points in 36 minutes. The 3 games they played last year where Westbrook was in, he put up 63, 56, and 76 fantasy points. So we do know that there is upside there. We know that Utah has been getting better on defense this year, not anywhere near where they have been the last couple years, but certainly improving, and they've crept into the top 10 now. They are playing a little bit faster than we have seen in the past, so I'm not scared of this matchup, but when we're looking at Westbrook, we may not be getting to Harden. Would you consider not going with Harden and going with like a Westbrook Durant, a Westbrook Curry, a Westbrook Wall Booker? What are you looking at if you're not going to go for Harden? When does Westbrook start to come into play for you?
It's tough. I mean, it's just Westbrook's not even close to Harden for me. And that's the problem. Like, I have Harden projected for 20 points more than Westbrook.
And it's for only 500 more, Adam, on their salaries, 11,100 on DraftKings.
Right. Westbrook is. Yeah, it's not like you're getting a huge discount on Westbrook relative to Harden. Like, you're still sacrificing a bunch of stuff if you get Westbrook. So it would have to be just an insane ownership gap between Harden and Westbrook for me to start being interested there. Just because I think that Harden's in such a better spot. I mentioned Harden's played 420 minutes without Paul and Melo. He's averaged just shy of 1.8 DraftKings points per minute. Westbrook, since coming back from his injury on November 19th, in 15 games, he's averaged 1.5 fantasy points per minute, which obviously is really good. And on most slates, that makes him a really good play, but not on this one. So I just don't really have interest in Westbrook here because I just think Harden's so much better. And then, it's kind of the same story for Paul George. Like, I think Paul George is really good. He's still been a very high usage guy even since Westbrook came back. But when you compare him to, a similarly priced Kevin Durant, where you factor in that if you go George and Harden, it really limits what else you can do with your roster. It's tough to prioritize George either.
All right. Gosh, Westbrook marginalized. Gotta love DFS. Gotta love it. Love the slate. Love what's dealt. Love the pieces. We're all playing with the same parameters. How about Paul George at 9,400? I think I'd rather go with any of the guards or even the forwards for the discount or similar prices in that Phoenix and Washington game, Adam.
Yeah, George has been really good since Westbrook came back, almost 1.4 fantasy points per minute. It's surprised me. I think it's kind of surprised a lot of people based on the fact that for a while he was going completely overlooked. But, you mentioned all the guards in that price range that are in really good spots. Also, Kevin Durant, as I had said before, is basically the same price. It's just really difficult for me to prioritize Paul George here. The only guy from OKC that I think I probably end up getting to with maybe any regularity would be Schroeder. He's only 5,400 on DraftKings, probably plays around 30 minutes here. He's averaged, 0.93 fantasy points per minute since Westbrook came back. That's not even a priority play for me. It's just, that he's at least cheap, whereas Westbrook, George, and Adams are all pretty expensive.
Speaking of the similar price point here, Ricky Rubio had himself a game last night, 42 points, dropped in 4 3-pointers. Let's see, those 4 equal his total in his last 6 games. Wow. Ouch. What are you looking at here with Rubio? Because that was his first time cresting above 30 fantasy points since December 9th.
Yeah, I don't mind getting to some Rubio if you're playing a lot of lineups. He's just too cheap. It is a pace-up spot against Oklahoma City, which has been one of the fastest teams in the league over the last month. So, yeah, Rubio should play around 32 minutes. The production obviously comes and goes, but there's no question that he can beat a $5,400 price tag by a pretty wide margin. So it's still a guy that's averaging, over the last month, even though he hasn't been that productive, looking at game logs, over the last month, he still averaged 0.92 fantasy points per minute, should play around 32 minutes in a huge pace-up spot at a cheap price tag. So I have no problems with Rubio. I think that Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert are both reasonable tournament options as well, but I doubt that I end up prioritizing any of them.
Looking at Gobert and Adams, the last few times they have played each other over the last 2.5 seasons, neither one really gets over 30 fantasy points, like literally over 30 fantasy points. So I wanted to call them out. If you're doing anything over there on draft, usually I say wait on center. I wouldn't care if I got one of those guys with my last pick, but I'm not feeling the love on potential upside for either one. Adam, anything else, or shall we do a couple Thrive questions here?
Yeah, we can do Thrive.
All right. Well, while Adam's calling it up, I'm going to drop this into the old chat. We have Thrive Fantasy Sports. It's one of the new kids on the block. They are a prop game. So basically what they do is they give you 10 questions. You select 10 of them, and then it's a binary outcome. It's an either or, which you'll see us go over a couple here. And then based upon the probability of those happening, you'll get more points or less points for your decision there. So it's a lot of fun, and they do have a deposit bonus that they are currently offering. Anybody that comes in on the Osmo link that I just dropped there in the chat, if you download the app, so you'll go to that website, but the app will be end up being on your phone. But if you deposit $10, you'll get $10 You deposit 100, they'll give you 20, and you deposit 200 or more, and they'll give you 50, and that's available for immediate play. So pretty decent deal out there. They are not in all the same states that regular DFS is in, so you'll want to double check that before signing up. But they are widely available out there. Let's see. Oh, I'm going to confirm here. I think Ibaka is out. We'll circle back on that, Adam. But let's do a couple of the Thrive questions.
Yeah, so football today, no basketball contest posted. Okay. But yeah, so first one on here from the Redskins-Titans game, Josh Johnson over under 185.5 passing yards with 105 points to the under, 95 to the over.
That's a good one. I'm just calling up. We don't have a ton of track record with him. He'd been out of the league for many, many moons. He hadn't played in the league since 2013. In his last two games, 195, 151. That's against the Giants and Jacksonville. Most of the little projections I'm looking at here have him right around 200. I'm going to say the under, Adam, because it's the Redskins, and if they can find a way to break your heart, even though they're still mathematically alive in the playoffs, they're going to do that today.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you. I have no confidence in him, but I do think the 185.5 is a little low, so I'll take the over there.
Yeah, that's fair. But
if for no other reason, because they suck and they'll have to pass.
There you are. All right, give us another couple here.
All right, so on the other side, Marcus Mariota, 20.5 completions, 105 points for the over, 95 for the under.
All right, let's look at some Mariota game logs. Now, he was hurt, couldn't feel his arm at the beginning of the season, but he has, that's attempts. He has topped 20 completions in less than half his games this season. The last 3 games, 12, 18, and 20. I think they're going to want to continue to ride Henry, who had some words there from George, Eddie George, the running back, who said you need to run every play as if it's going to be your last in the league. You're a big guy. You need to seek out contact, and go for it. And since then, he's been having some tremendous games. Hey, who knows what that's going to happen, but I suspect they're going to try to get Henry as much as possible. And just looking at this, I don't think Mariota is going to get 22 completions. Hell, he only had 88 passing yards in the last game. So I'm going to take the under.
Yeah, I'll take the under too. For all the reasons you said. So one more from the Baltimore. So going to the Baltimore and Chargers game, over under 66.5 rushing yards for Lamar Jackson. 105 points for the over.
I'll take the over. And I'm gonna hope he gets a 30-yarder to do it, because at some point he's gonna get dinged up, and this is not. We've seen this with every running quarterback out there, from Culpepper to RG3 to fill in the blank, Michael Vick. These guys look good for a while, but just the abuse that they take. A lot of these hits that they're taking are like driving your car into a brick wall at 15, 20 miles an hour. Yeah, you're gonna walk away from it, but you're not gonna feel good. And they're having this happen to him multiple times a game. I'll take the over. But it would not surprise me if he doesn't get it at all.
Yeah, I'll take the over also.
All right, let's do one more, and then we'll talk Ibaka, who has been ruled out officially.
Oh, we're doing one more?
Yeah.
Melvin Gordon, over under 70.5 rushing yards, 105 points to the over.
I'm going to take the over. They need to keep winning. They have the number 1 seed in their sights, and he should be mostly healthy. I'll take the over.
I will take the under.
Haters gonna hate. All right, Ibaka officially ruled out. This news was just officially posted here on RotoWorld, sorting Brian Murphy from Twitter. So Ibaka out. What are we going to do with Pascal Siakam? What are we going to do with Greg Monroe, OG Anunoby, and who gets to have the fun of being posterized by Joel Embiid tonight?
Yeah, I think, obviously we'll have to keep an eye on the starting lineup there, but I imagine Greg Monroe gets back into the starting lineup. I mean, they certainly could go with Siakam. Last year they actually liked to use Jakob Poeltl against Embiid, which obviously not an option anymore. So it'll be interesting to see who they go with. Trying to pull up yesterday's rotation to try and take a guess at it. You had Monroe play the backup center minutes yesterday, so it's not like they just decided he's not in the rotation anymore. So I mean, I imagine that they'll start either Siakam or Monroe. Obviously, just have to wait there. If Pascal starts at the 5, then obviously that's more appealing than if he starts at the 4. But either way, he should be productive. Not a huge sample size this season without any of Ibaka, Lowry, or Kawhi on the floor, obviously. But we have 76 minutes for Pascal Siakam, 24% usage rate, not 10% assist percentage, 10% rebounding percentage, 11 or 12% assist percentage. He's the guy that I would expect to be very, very good here, regardless of what position he's playing.
All right, we are going to get on out of here, but we've got a bunch of shows available on demand for you right now, including On the Contrary with Alex Baker. You know him better as Osmo, with the one and only Evan Silva and Chris Spags. We also have Three Fellas Talking Football. They're covering the Saturday game breakdown. That's Andrew Barron, Ben Rossa, and Dave Loughran. You know him as Alafi D. And then we've got Jay Kari put up the NHL show already. So we got a ton of stuff there. Tonight you'll get Live Before Lock with Fast Eddie Fear at 6 o'clock. And then tomorrow you got NFL content that will be on air between 11 and 1. The first show will be Ben and Laffy breaking down game by game. And then Spags and Josh Engelman will take you up to lock. The Osmo promo, 24 days of giveaways today. As soon as this show is over, the comment section will appear underneath here on the YouTube channel. Put in your favorite holiday tradition. Do you like to go sledding? Is it a meal that you liked? What is your favorite thing about the holidays? Put that in the comment. We will assemble all the comments from all of the Osmo shows today. One lucky winner will be drawn randomly and win a 1-month free premium subscription to Osmo. If you're already a member of Osmo, go to shop.osmo.com because you're going to get to choose one item out of the merchandise store. A lot of fun stuff in there. And then what else do we got, Adam? I think that's going to do it for us. We're going to get on it.
Yeah, I'll have the deep dive article up behind the paywall for premium subscribers sometime around 3:30-ish.
Excellent. And with that, gamers, good luck.